guys, it's Reagan and today I'm here to do my May wrap up, and this video is being sponsored in part by Disney Book Group. Now for the month of May, I almost read a total of 6 books, but I didn't quite finish that last one before June 1st hit me. Though I did read a total of 5, and all of them I really enjoyed, so I'm super pumped to talk about them. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right into the video. The first 2 books I'm going to talk about are my current obsession that I just haven't stopped talking about since I read them, and that is An Ember in the Ashes and the sequel, A Torch Against the Night, the first 2 books to the Ember in the Ashes series by Sabati here. I read both of these books this month, absolutely fell in love with the story, the world, the characters, and I'm highly anticipating the release of the next book in June, but these books were just incredible. Starting first with An Ember in the Ashes, this is a Roman-inspired fantasy novel. One of our main characters is named Leia, and she is part of the scholar class, which was basically conquered by the current ruling class. She basically spends her days just trying to keep her head down, trying to stay out of trouble, as any type of treason or defiance is met with death in this world. However, one day when her brother is arrested for treason, she gets involved with the rebel group and becomes a spy in exchange for help of breaking him out of jail. We also follow our main character Elias, who is an elite soldier, a part of this like intense training school where basically kids are trained from an incredibly young age to be elite silver masks, and basically the Empire's way of crushing any said defiance. He hates it, however, and these 2 characters' lives cross paths, but not in the way you would expect. This book is about magic, hope, fighting for a better day. It has such emotional impact, and also just the plot and the characters are just incredible. I mean, not only does this book keep you on the edge of your seat, but both of these characters has such intense journeys that you just get caught up in everything that's going on. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel so much. I just love this fantasy series so much. I gave the first book a 5 out of 5 stars, and after I read that, I immediately picked up A Torch Against the Night, which is the sequel, and I have to say I loved this book just as much as the first one. Again, the characters are just so incredibly dynamic, and the relationships are so much more complex than you assume from the synopsis. This isn't just like a boy meets girls, different worlds, their love clashes in the middle. No. This is not a love-centered first fantasy story. This is a people and character-centered first, and it's just so incredibly gripping. I flew through the second one. I absolutely loved it. It literally just like keeps me up. I just think about this series so much. It's amazing. And I also gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars as well. After that, I immediately jumped into the Perustopia Book Club Pick of the Month for the month of May, and this month we are reading The Trials of Apollo, Book 3, The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan, and I loved this book as well. I have a full non-spoiler review of this, which I'll leave linked down below, but this series is just amazing. It follows our main character Apollo, who's been cast out of Olympus by Zeus and turned into a preteen boy who's not nearly as strong as Apollo once was as a god. However, Apollo has kept all of his arrogance and entitlement, even though he is now a weak little demigod. We follow Apollo as he makes new friends and also runs into old characters to basically solve the Oracle crisis, which is another kind of like Roman-centered villain, which was so great. But the fantastic thing about this story throughout the novels is we get to see Apollo grow more and more human and gain more and more empathy for the demigods he's always interacted with throughout his very long life. But now that he is one and gets to see the impact of all of these quests have on these characters, you see him slowly become more and more human, and as a character arc and development, it's just such a great thing to read. Not to mention the cameos of old past characters are always so great, but the integration of new characters are some of my absolute favorites. Meg, Apollo's kind of sidekick in the story, is one of my top 5 favorite Rick Riordan characters of all time. That being said, this third novel really upped the ante, both in emotional stakes and plot stakes. I mean, things happen in this book that I honestly can say I never expected Rick Riordan to go there. I was emotionally drained after reading this. This was intense, and it really delved pretty deeply into the aftermath of quests and the emotional fallout and the impact of going through something so traumatic has on these characters, and I just thought it was such a great story. I loved it so much. Favorite book of the series so far. 5 out of 5 stars. After basically flying through 3 amazing books at the beginning of the month, I did fall into a bit of a reading slump, and it was it was hard. I was picking up a lot of things, I wasn't getting into them. I had a very difficult week and a half there where everything just couldn't compare to the first 3 books I read that month. But then I picked up The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden and absolutely fell in love. This is a rich historical fantasy set in the wilderness of Russia. I want to say like 15th, 14th century Russia. Our main character Vasa, who lives in this kind of enclosure near the wilderness. Her father is kind of like the lord, and there's a small town, but they all live in this like wooden enclosure near the edge of the woods. And the winters here are long and they are painful even to read. So they spent a lot of times indoors huddled around the hearth to stay warm. And when they do this, they also spend a lot of their times listening to the stories of old, the folklore that has been present in the land for as long as anyone can remember. However, after Vasa's mother passes away and his father remarries a woman who is very, very orthodox, and she basically passes her time trying to rid the town of any remnant of the religion of old. She tries to get rid of all folklore. When she starts to do this, the town becomes incredibly in danger by an evil outside force, and it's up to Vasya to basically save the day. This novel, it was so fantastic for so many different reasons. First and foremost, the atmosphere of the story was just incredible. The wilderness setting, the cold I literally felt in my bones when I was reading it. Like, I can't even describe it to you, but the author can write like a Russian landscape so well. I mean, on top of the fact that the plot of this is centered around Russian lords and Russian history and Russian folklore, like, I have a pretty, I'm gonna buy into that pretty easily because that is some of my favorite things of all time. And I also had the nod to the author. I felt like she really tried to stay true to the historical context. Like, obviously this book is not a history novel, but it really, I feel like she really tries to capture the time period and also the sentiment and the feelings and also what would be appropriate in this time period and try to reflect that into characters' reactions and characters' behaviors, and I really appreciated that throughout this novel. Our main character Vasya was a wonderful joy to read. She was spunky, she had fire, and she was just trying to try her best, and it was just so good. I loved this book so much. It was deeply enriching. It had this fairy tale element where you just were completely captured into the story. It had maybe a bit of a slow start in the beginning, but then there was just this steady increase in pace until you just were flipping the pages. I could not stop reading this novel. I loved it so much. 4.5 out of 5 stars, so good. And the final book I completed this month was Everlast by Neil Shusterman. This is the first book in the Skinjacker trilogy by Neil Shusterman and a reread for me. I initially read this book for the first time in middle school, so that was a long time ago, and going into the story, I very did not remember anything that happened. This follows our 2 main characters who at the beginning of the story have passed away, and they find themselves awake in a place called Everlost, which is this kind of in-between place between life and death, and only children can exist here, and they basically are trying to go through this world and essentially find their way back to life or find where they need to get going to. As we follow these main characters, we begin to uncover the secrets of this world, meet a lot of very interesting characters. Neil Shusterman does a fantastic job with writing so many things, obviously. He's one of my favorite authors, but he does such a great job like crafting such interesting worlds that are so unique but also so grounded in our reality. Anyway, I really loved this first book. I flew through it. I can't wait to read the next couple books in the series. I liked it more, I feel like, now than I did as a kid. And Neil Shusterman just has an amazing way of writing multiple perspectives and adding like a level of intensity and mystery. Like, you're in a place, you feel like it's right, but there's just always this eerie feeling that Neil Shusterman can inject in any place. You're like, this appears to be paradise, but I don't buy it. So I loved this book. I ended up giving it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Can't wait to read book 2 in this trilogy. Loved it. Guys, those are all of the books I read in the month of June. Let me know down below some books you've read recently, as I would love to know, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!